right, Shalom. First and foremost, like of all praises and glory and opportunity to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Wakakadash, and the Heavenly Father, true name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Bahashem, in the names of Hamashiach Kabashai, those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, Mashwan Kadash tongue. And I said the rock thumb to the elders and apostles, Wa'akim Wa'akwa, and I said Shalom. And this is a prophecy updates as of July the 14th, 2025 on this Monday afternoon. And this is a news article from RT.com as of July the 14th, 2025 reads. It says Trump issues threats to Russia over Ukraine conflict. It says the U.S. president warns severe tariffs will be imposed if no peace deal is reached within 50 days. It says the U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose severe tariffs up to 100% on Russia's shredding partners unless a deal is reached to end the Ukraine conflict within 50 days. It says Trump issues the warning on Monday during a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office. It says, very, very unhappy. I am with Russia. We are going to be going very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in about 50 days, he stated. Trump blames his predecessor, Joe Biden, for dragging Washington into the conflict, saying the U.S. has spent approximately $350 billion on aid for Ukraine. It says the U.S. president also mentioned a Congress bill that would impose tougher sanctions on Russia, saying, I'm not sure we need it, but it's good that we're doing it. It could be useful. A Senate vote is expected next week. He noted that if there is no progress on Ukraine slapping Russia with the secondary U.S. tariffs would not require Congress approval. It says secondary tariffs are sometimes introduced on countries that do business with a sanctioned country. It says Trump also announced that the U.S. will send weapons to Ukraine through NATO, which would handle both payments and distribution. It says we have made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they are going to be paid for them. He said Russia has repeatedly denounced the Western for supplying Ukraine with weapons, warning that the only serves to prolong the conflict and make no impact of its outcome. The Russian stock market soared on Trump's remarks, with the main index jumping nearly 3%, according to the data from the Moscow Exchange. It's the book of Matthew 24. It's the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6. It says, ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? Russia versus Ukraine, Russia versus the United States. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Matthew 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, as we were seeing, Russia versus Ukraine, Russia versus NATO. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. And this is the book of Luke 21 and verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth, disgressive nations with perplexities which run. And that's what we're seeing, the disgressive nations with perplexity.
Talking to Joe. How they gonna be next year? It wasn't going down. I said, you get that, they're gonna go down there. This one might be a cold ass month. See, it's hot like this. That's why I'm going up to October, with my tennis food. I've been having a lot of food to do this. I won't even have to buy it, and then you have to walk and get the everything you do. See?
Right.
I am a bunch of shit. I'm going to be putting glasses on top of the can.
Right.
The can do it. Now, whether do that to be stopped.
Yeah, true.
You got to crack up, though. It may snow in. You can't get out and get that shit. done the right thing. You know, my feel good. Remember that time they had that bill, I went down south when my mama died? Y'all had no food, but had them said, Mama ain't no food in the house. That damn snow is knee deep. That snow is all the way up here. But you know, went down there and ate the food up. We got stuck with it. Then I went to order about $200 worth of food.
Oh, yes.
I paid cash for this shit.
Yeah.
It's lying to get like that, I'm serious. Like those shit. Shit came out.
Yeah.
That's why some people got 2 free. Think about getting me another one.
Right.
Like that shit, though. It's gonna be a cold one.
Yeah.
I tell you something, it's gonna be.
Yeah.
While I'm going out, get cans do it. You see? You need some cans do it. Yeah. Pals, peaches, all that shit.
Yeah.
Now, we have to do it. We gotta go get the egg. They gonna give you too many eggs. And butter. That's about extra. Go get your egg. You pay you have. I was going out getting meat. Like the little stuff on my restaurant. That little shit about $20. At least I don't have told them can do it for this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hundreds. I ain't got to buy no hundreds. I got to draw for them. Give me some extra sweet potatoes. Fill that cash. Yeah, that's a funny thing. You got to grow up. Sure, man, Junior talking about that. I'll be walling. You never know what's going to happen. We have all that shit cranked up. It was tearing up the store like they did before. Everybody had to work for this thing. You don't get that $7 for that shit. You should get something. You took the other hand from you'll get some stamps. You talking about these young girls got to wait for this shit. I done been through this shit. I did. You old. You did the church. You already know that.
Yeah. It's the book of Luke 21, verse 25. It says, "There shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth, discretion of nations with perplexities are one." Right, so that's what we see in the discretion of nations with perplexities are one, because we see in nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, seditions, uprisings, upwards from the world, and so will continue to increase. It's the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "To everything there is a time and season, every purpose in heaven." Why? So we're living in modern days of times and season, every purpose in heaven, which is modern day biblical signs and signs of times. Ecclesiasticus 3, verse 8. "In a time of love, in a time of HATE, in a time of war, in a time of peace." Right? So we're definitely living in a time of war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And we're seeing lawlessness and iniquities abounding, and we're seeing the increase of the discretion of nations, with perplexities rage ruling. It's the book of St. Mark, chapter 3, in verse 24. It says, "And if a kingdom be divided itself, the king cannot stand." Right, so if a kingdom be divided itself, the king cannot stand. That's perceived modern day kingdoms being divided against itself, which cannot stand. Because you're going to have a kingdom within a kingdom being divided, and then outside of a kingdom rising against another kingdom. St. Mark chapter 3, verse 25. It says, "And if a house be divided itself, the house cannot stand." Right, so if a house be divided itself, the house cannot stand. We see that as well too. And this is the book of Ezekiel, because the Russia-Ukraine situation is only going to intensify. It's the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, and verse 4. It says, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. I will bring thee forth from all thine army, horse and horsemen, all of them cloth of all sorts of armor, giving a great couple of buckler shields, all men and swords." Right, so Russia is still going to be in a war-like mindset, while the Russia-Ukraine situation going on, and tensions are heating up between Russia and Ukraine, Russia versus NATO as well too. Now you got the United States saying that if Russia don't come to an agreement with Ukraine within the next 50 days, they're going to use more economic sanctions. They're going to use 100% tariffs on Russia, while the Russia-Ukraine situation is intensifying. So we definitely see Russia in that war-like mindset. So the tensions are only going to heat up between Russia and the United States, Russia versus Ukraine, and Russia versus NATO as well too. This is the prophet Joel, chapter 3, and verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty man, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Right, so that's what we see. The Heavenly Father's putting that warlike mindset of these armies of nations. So that's why we see more military spending, more tensions are heating up between the nations, more military exercise drills. So we all those categories that I just mentioned is only going to continue to increase. Joel 10:10. Beat your plowshares and the swords and the political and the spears, let the weak center strong. Right, let the weak center strong. You're going to have Iran building up their capability, North Korea building up their capability as they teaming up with these powerhouse nations going against the Western countries. And let the weak center strong. It's going to continue to increase. It's the book of Revelations 11:14. It says, the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. Right, so the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. Matter of fact, it's in Revelations 9:12. Got Revelations 9:12. It says, the one will pass, behold, two woes, more thereafter. Right, because the one will pass, now the two woes, more thereafter. Revelations 11:14, the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. Right, so the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. So the one woe express came to pass, and the two woes express came after, is coming after. So the second woe express came to pass, and behold, the third woe express coming quickly. That leads up to the third world's war. That's what we see in war, seditions, uprisings, upwards, people of the world, expressive nations with perplexity. All is going to lead to the third world's war. As it says again, Trump issues a threat to Russia over the Ukraine conflict. The U.S. president will warn severe tariffs will be imposed if no peace is reached in 50 days. And what the scriptures do say about peace, this is 1 Thessalonians. Yeah, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5:3. It says, when they shall say peace and safety, so destruction come upon them, as Jabez woman child some escape. Because we're still going to be seeing wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And all that's going to lead up to the third world war. Right, so as it says again, Trump issues a threat to Russia over the Ukraine conflict. The U.S. president warns severe tariffs will impose if no peace deal is reached within 50 days. Right, so as I bring out that 1 Thessalonians 5:3, from what they shall say peace and safety, such words come upon them as a Jabez woman child shall not escape. And this is another sign of wars and rumors of wars. I remember not too long ago, I would say like 2 months ago, even had intensity between Russia and Germany as well too, because I believe Germany has aid and assistance Ukraine with military assistance. I would say like a couple of months ago, not too long ago, from the previous times until recently, as I had a side note to that. So these are wars and rumors of wars, like it says in the book of Matthew 24:6. This is a news article from RT.com. As we've been seeing, the tensions are heating up between NATO and Russia, as I add another side note to that as well too. And this is a news article from July 14, 2025. Reads, it says German defense minister says German defense minister says troops ready to kill Russians. Moscow has dismissed the speculations it has plans to attack NATO as nonsense. It says German troops are prepared to kill Russian soldiers if Moscow attacks a NATO member. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has suggested, because definitely the tensions definitely been heating up between Russia and NATO, so there's no doubt about it. Despite the fact Moscow or Russia trying to deny the allegations, but tensions are definitely heating up. I would say throughout the years previously and recently as well too, as tensions are been military building up and increase between NATO and Russia over in the northern flank and eastern flank as well too. It says in an interview with the Financial Times published on Sunday, Pistorius expressed that German forces, and some of whom has recently redeployed to Lithuania, will not hesitate to take legal action if necessary. It doesn't deter us, doesn't work with Russia attacks. It's going to happen. Yes, Pistorius said, but I recommend that you simply go to the revealing this and talking to the representatives of German branch there. They know exactly what their job is. According to the beach rest, and talking about peace and identity could only be possible only in equal terms and form the position of strength, not to intimidate anyone, but to make it clear, to know that we can do what we want, to live in peace with you, but we don't think that we are weak or that we won't defend ourselves. He added, it says Moscow has repeatedly dismissed speculations that Russia plans to attack NATO as a nonsense argument. It has no interest in doing so. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has also criticized what he described as Western leadership attempts to fear-mongering, saying they have made a monster out of Russia in order to justify the decision to increase the NATO defense spending to 5% of GDP. Gacharov also signaled out German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as a fierce apologist for confrontation with Russia, accusing him of aggression mobilizing Europe. German officials has also been debating a potential return to some of military prescriptions to reinforce the military in case there are not enough volunteers to fill the ranks. It's the book of 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, set destruction come upon them, as if every one child shall escape. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? Russia versus NATO, Russia versus its Ukrainian allies, even though it's been speculation said they're not trying to attempt to target NATO, but the tensions are definitely been there. That's why this is wars and rumors of wars between the nations. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must first come to pass, but it is not yet. Matthew 24 and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. It's the book of Luke 21 verse 9. It says, but when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by anybody. Luke 21 verse 10. Then said he unto them, nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Right, as we're seeing wars and commotions, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Even though it's been on and on back and forth, speculation. Sometimes it might be true, sometimes it might be not. That's why it's wars and rumors and wars. But we definitely see the tensions are heating up between these nations. Luke 21 verse 11. A great earthquake shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilence, and from precise great signs shall be from heaven as well too. So we're going to see that as well too. And this is the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 9 and verse 3. It says, therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes, upwards people will. Right, so that's what we're seeing, increasing earthquakes and upwards people will. It's the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15 and verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, right, grace rest to the world and them that dwell therein. 2nd Ezra 15 verse 15, for the sword and destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another sword's hands. Right, so that's what we're seeing, for the sword and destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another sword's hands. We don't modern swords and weapon. 2nd Ezra 15 verse 16, for there should be sedition among men, which we're seeing right now throughout the whole planet Earth, but it's going to come to full effect. That's 2nd Ezra 16 chapter, that great insurrection uprising. For there should be sedition among men, debating one another. They should not regard their kings, nor their princes, in the course of action stand in power. Right, you're going to have citizens rising against one another, clashing against one another, and rising up against their elites of power due to the unrighteous creeds, like it says in Isaiah 10 verse 1. Yep, so as it says again, Germany defense minister says troops ready to kill Russians. If this speculation is true about Moscow potentially attacking NATO, they said, according to him, potentially Russia is prepared to go to war with Russia. So, hey, these are wars, rumors of wars. Russia versus NATO heating up. Russia versus Ukraine. Russia versus the allies of Ukraine. So, hey, these tensions are definitely heating up between these nations. As I said, once again, even though it may speculation, it might be true or not, but we definitely seeing the tensions are heating up between these nations. That's why it says wars, rumors of wars. It says the Dmitry trend, the World War III has begun. In the West's eyes, Russia must be destroyed. Yes, leaves no choice. That's according to the news article from the analysts. It It says Putin aid issued a warning on Russian economy. It says U.S.-Japan relations ongoing era defining crisis. FT reports. It says Trump could send long-range missiles to Ukraine, right? Because he's signed a deal with NATO to have being sent over there. It says NATO turned Moldova into a battering ram against Russia, Moscow reports. It says the EU will pay for Patriot deliveries to Ukraine. It says U.S. weapon supplies to Ukraine never stop, Kremlin reports. It says Ukraine recruit killed in a Serbian shootout, SAB reports. Right, that's sedition among the nation, sedition among men, as we've seen. Go to Air News. It says a military attack kills 48 in a central civilian village, War Monitor reports. 2 drones fell in Almila out oil field in Iraq, Kurdistan counter. TERRORSM services. It says the Israeli forces failed to shoot a 20-year-old Palestinian man near Geneva. It says Iraqis face difficult return from Syria camp for best families. Egypt says the Israel-EU agreement has not increased aid to Gaza. It says Lebanese armies shuts illegal crossing along the borders with Syria. Lebanese army destroys major Capricorn and crystal meth lab sealed off the tunnel. It says Syrian government forces take over Kurdish village in the south. It says Jordanian armed forces piercing star exercise improved skills in the eastern region. Right, that's that Joel 3rd chapter. It says Israel strikes military tanks in southern Syria as Syrian forces clash with Turkish militaries. Yep, that goes into that Isaiah 17 verse 1. We see that in progress. So despite the fact they're trying to rebuild over there in Syria, because you're still going to have proxy groups over there, heavy clashes, escalations, cross-border conflicts between over there in that region, especially throughout all Syria. As a side note to that. Yeah, this is a news article from Arab News. It says Israel strike military tanks in southern Syria as Syrian forces clashes with drones militarized. I believe they did once before. Now it's happening again for the second time, if I'm not mistaken. Fighting between the Druze militant men and Balutan tribe fighters was the first time that sector of violence erupted inside the city of Sitdown itself. And this was updated 16 seconds ago from the AP, July 14, 2025 from airnews.com. It says Damascus of Syria. It says Israel has struck military tanks in southern Syria as the Syrian government forces and Balutan tribes clashes with Russian militaries there. Dozens of people have been killed in the fighting between the local militaries and clans in Syria's Sordia province government security forces that were sent to restore order Monday also clashed with local army groups. It says the Interior Minister has said more than 39 people had died, and nearly 100 others has been injured in that fighting. Dozens of people have been killed in a fighting between local militaries and clans in Syria's Swat province. The government security forces sent to restore order Monday also clashed with local armed groups. The Interior Minister says more than 39 people have died and 100 others have been injured The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a UK-based war monitor, reported that 50 dead, according to children and 6 members of the security forces. Clashes initially broke out between the armed groups from the Druze religious minority in the Sunni Border clans. The observatory says that with some members of the government security forces actively participating in support of the if I pronounced that right, Interior Minister sponsor. It says Interior Minister spokesperson Nuruddin Al-Laba told State One Al Malakoya TV that government forces entered Sweden in the early mornings to restore order. Some clashes occurred with the outlawed armed groups, but our forces are doing their best to prevent any civilian casualties, he said. The observatory clashes had started at a series of kidnaps between both groups and began with members of the Bandung tribes in the area set up checkpoints where they attacked robbed young Bush's men. Ramia Wahin, the head of the observatory, says that the conflict started with the kidnapping and robbery of the Druze investigated settlers, leading to attacks and kidnappings. It says Syrian defense and interior defense were reported deploying personnel to the area to attempt to restore order. It says the interior minister described the situation as a dangerous escalation that had come in the absence of the relevant officials and institutes, which have led a exacerbation, if I pronounced it right. It says of the state of chaos, the deterioration of the security situation, and the inability of the local communities to contain the situation despite repeated calls for calm. Factors from the Druze minority has been suspicious of the new authorities in Damascus as former President Bashar also fled from the country during a rebel offense led in the Sunni Islamic insurgents groups in December. Earlier this year, Russian groups in Syria clashed with security forces from the new government. The Russian religious sector is a minority group that began as a 10th century offshoot of Islamism, a branch of Shiite Islam in Syria. It said they largely live in the southern Swedia province in some suburbs of Damascus, nearly Jalamania, in the Al-Shabatat, Sheminiya, and to the south. The Druze developed their own militants during the country's nearly 14-year civil war. Since the Assad falls, different Druze factions have been odds over whether they integrate with the new government and armed forces. It's the book of 2nd Esdras 15 verse 15. It says, "For the sword of discretion draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another with swords in hands." Right, that's what we're seeing with these clashes over there in Syria that have been taking place for a very long time, and we stand to increasing. 2nd Esdras chapter 15 verse 16. "For there shall be sedition among men," which we're seeing around the world. "For there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings of their princes, of course, the action stand in power." We're going to see that as well too. And this is the book of Luke 21 verse 25. Once again, it says, "There shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth, disgressive nations with complexities which one." So with that, hopefully this sit down lessons are edifying. The prophecy updates as of July the 14th, 2025 on this Monday afternoon. So with that, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Kakadash, and the Heavenly Father, which your name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Bahashem, and the name of Hamashiach Hamashai. Those that you names in the ancient Hebrew, the last one class from tongue. And I say the rock to the elders and apostles who are Akim Akbar to next time. I say Shalom.